what's
Fine.
been happening. So just to reiterate, my name's Catherine Marriott. I'm the Regional Manager for Southern Water Wastewater Networks in Sussex. So as you are, why we're all here, there's been a lot of activity this year in Southwick, around Southwick Green and Southdown View. So I just wanted to go through what's been going on and what's caused the issue. So
Catherine, sorry, just before
yes.
you go on, will you be able to make these slides available? Because I can see there's going to be quite a lot
Yes.
of detail in here. So if we can circulate them so we don't have to take loads and loads of notes to get the figures down.
Not a problem. I'm sure Sue will be fine with that.
Thank you.
So groundwater. What is exactly groundwater? So initially, during normal conditions, groundwater enters our sewage system and there's no issues. But during the winter, when it's colder and the plants are dormant, the rainfall soaks into the ground and it adds to the water table. And then when it increases into our sewage system and our surface system, it can create high levels. So as you're probably all aware, we've had really bad weather. I feel like we haven't had a summer this last year, and hopefully will this year. But February is being recorded that we've had the most rain on record, with 183 millimeters of rain, and normally we only get an average of 66. So at the moment around Southwick, the groundwater has got high and it's entered into our system, and over the last so it enters into our system, and also where some of our pipes have got cracks, or some private and public systems have got cracks in the pipework, it can overwhelm the system. So all the flows are run by gravity, and they look for the lowest spot of a capacity, and then unfortunately the levels will build. And unfortunately, over this winter period, we've had prolonged rainfall, and this has happened to affect the local streams and the flows from the downs towards the sea between Southwick and Underdown Road and Southdown Road. Sue, if you could go for the next page, please. You have to excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. So since over the last few years, and in particular February 22nd, I think a lot of people are familiar with what we call the overpumping situation in Southwick. I too myself was a resident in Southwick for 18 months, and we used to see the pumps pop up now and again, especially in the winter. So the reason why that we've had the overpumping there is to alleviate the sewers, so that it stops people from flooding internally and externally, and stopping the pollution. The pollution can come out through the manholes on the road, as well as in people's gardens and properties as well. So most recently you would have seen a high number of tankers. We believe it or not, we didn't want to impact you too much with regards to the tanker movements and the pumps, but the levels were so high we could not keep on top of them at the moment. And this is all so that we could remove the excess water and take it to the local treatment works, which is East Worthing, so that it could be treated, and this would prevent homes from flooding. So I believe we stood down the final tanker on Monday, I believe. We've actually set up 4 pumping units, overpumping units, one on Southdown Road, and also one on the Green. And Roger, where's the other one? It's just
the last one is by the railway underpass.
That's it. Thank you. Yeah. So we've put those in place so that we can alleviate the excess water and reduce the tanker movement and not be so in people's faces. With regards to the over pumping, normally we do foul to foul, so we find another manhole further down the network, but in this case we've had to go foul to surface water, which means that it's a short-term solution, and it means that the process is that it goes through from the foul and it goes through a settlement tank where there's coper sacks, so it gets rid of all the solids and it's treated, and then it's going out into the harbour, into Shoreham Harbour. This is where we've worked very, very closely. It's a last resort, and also we work very closely with the Environment Agency because, like everyone, we don't want to pollute the seas and the rivers. On this one, we have had everything approved by the Environmental Agency. We have to seek permission and give them our plan. And at the moment, we're having daily sampling taking place. But because of how heavily diluted this water is, this excess water is due to the groundwater, the levels of ammonia and bacteria are very, very low. And those are being reported to the Environmental Agency daily. And we're also getting checks done on the performance of the pumps, but also with regards to the coper sacks and the treatment process in place. When it comes to the customers, with the actual event in Southwick where there was a lot of tankers was actually being run as what we call a level 3 incident. So that meant it had everyone's focus on it from different parts of the business, and we were working a lot around the clock with stakeholders, the likes of Sue, media, customer was one of our big ones because it's such a high footfall. So we've sent text messages out to local residents. We've also hand delivered 150 customers living near to the green. We've also posted over 1,000 letters to the wider area, and we've also had customer teams on site as well during the busy period as well, knocking on doors, just updating people. And we've also been updating our website and our incident map. See the next page, please. So in the short term, the overpumping that we've put in place, that's our short-term measure while these flows are really high. But long-term solution is to prevent the groundwater from entering the system. And we can only do this by what we call by sealing the sewers and making them watertight with all the cracks and everything. So like Vanessa, we go to our colleagues in modelling, but also in asset reliability. So we've requested, in our flood mitigation team, we've requested that we do an electro survey, which looks at the whole catchment in that area to see where the cracks are, how much of what we have to do. And when we talk about sealing the sewers, it's a technique that we use called lining, which is basically very millimeters worth of sort of like, it's how do you call it, Roger? You see,
resin.
Roger's my
It's a
technical
fiberglass
person.
resin liner, which is basically the same sort of stuff that you that they build yachts with.
Thank you. So it's very thin and it's cured and it seals, and we have quite a long lifespan on that one. We did do this, I believe, in 2013-14, and it did help reduce the sewers in the system. But because the groundwater table has got very, very high, not just in Sussex, but around Hampshire as well, the problems reoccurred. So at the moment, we're sort of like got the wheels in motion with regards to our teams behind us to start all of that, to look for a longer term solution. And I believe maybe it'll be easier if you had questions.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Can I just kick off on
Please
two things, because there's the whole historic nature of the green, and it was gosh, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago when Waterdyke Road completely flooded and there was underwater for a long time. And at one stage, Southern Water put additional tank capacity under Southwick Green
That's
to cope with capture some of the water. So clearly, we've now got an even bigger problem, because we haven't had this length of time having to use pumps and pipes overground. So that's the first thing. If we can do a bit more about the history. So are you now going to look at putting even more capacity in? Is that viable or whatever? But the second issue, Catherine, is this hasn't just happened in February. Those pipes and the pumps have been there since
November.
Christmas.
Yes.
And then just after the new year, we had that collapsed sewer on the north west corner of the green, and the road has been closed off since then, as well as the road at the opposite triangular corner of the green as well. So it's now 3 months almost that we've had this ongoing problem, made worse by the additional record rainfall in February. But it's not something that's just been made worse, that just got really bad in the last few weeks. It's been happening the last 3 months.
Yeah. So to go back with regards to the history, that's why I brought Roger and Phil. Phil is also a local person, just in the next village along. But when you talk about the tanks, we have a couple of tanks that we call storage SSTs, storm storage tanks. One of which is right on the main road, opposite Albion Street pumping station, on the corner just as you go into underneath the railway bridge. So we have one there that has a capacity of, I believe, around 8 hours, off the top of my head. We also have what's called a surface water pumping station on the actual green, so on the cricket, where the guys play cricket. So that pumping station has been thoroughly checked over, because I look at myself and my team look after not just the sewer networks, but also the pumping stations, and I work very closely. So when we have issues, we don't just look at the sewers, we look at the bigger picture, such as what's nearby with regards to pumping stations. So the nearest one is the green, on the cricket field. That one has all had its full clean bill of health. The pumps have been checked and they're running at the capacity that they're supposed to. And I believe also that we also have some what we call anti-flood devices on some properties in the area, where we have had internal flooding before to help prevent that from happening. So with regards to the second part of the question, Roger, Phil, would you mind picking up for me with regards to the collapsed sewer? Because I know you guys, Phil, you were quite involved in that.
No, I wasn't.
Sorry.
I didn't know. Roger might know more about that one. I can sort of go back a little bit more about just to quickly hint on the other storage tanks at the bottom of the green. As you mentioned, Waterdyke Avenue there, that was a great source of flooding for many years. In fact, anyone who lives around there will know that we've had decades. This isn't just a new event. This has been decades and decades of problems in Southwick. There was major flooding. The entire green went underwater back in sort of 2000 things, and they put extra capacity in the storage tanks. They're just purely on the surface water sewers, not on the foul sewers. And then there's like a super gully put in as well to collect rainwater. And then the building of a pump station. Everyone used to go out to sea on the surface water on gravity. So if the tide was in, it didn't discharge. So they built a surface water pump station. So whether the tide's in or out, they can get rid of the surface water as much as possible. So that really has helped. And in fact, when you go around the green, the surface water sewers are a much lower level than the foul sewers because they can really keep the surface water pumping out all the time. So the surface water has had a lot of issues addressed because it's easier to deal with, because you can't just build a tank and then pump it out to sea. You can't really do the same thing with the foul sewer. It's a much more difficult thing to deal with. But anyway, Roger, do you know about that sewer that collapsed? The one that was undermined, wasn't it? Sort of eroded away.
So I'd say obviously Neil was dealing with
Neil was
that
dealing
area
with
at the time.
I think
Nick is on the call.
With us as well, because we normally have two sewer network managers, and Roger's been involved in this for the last month or
Yeah.
so. So
I think what did happen from I did do a site visit, and there was a hole in the top of the sewer, and with the movement of waters, it basically just the earth just kept dropping into the sewer and washing away. So it ended up with a huge void above it. And then when we had that problem with the car, I think I had about a fire. The two went side by side, but a hole opened up in the road, a small hole, but under that was a huge void. So it was just a small hole in the top of the sewer that they had to dig down, repair that, replace that bit of pipe. But that's all it was. It wasn't really a contributing factor in any way, really, to the flooding. It was a sort of by the by. It was just another issue. So that has been addressed. That sewer has been repaired, lined through. So that's all okay now. Yeah. So that's. I hope that answers that one.
But can I just query, and then I'll bring in everybody else for questions. Was that a very old sewer that it basically was needed replacing anyway, or what caused that hole in the sewer? You don't just get a hole in the sewer and then it all collapses in it. Is it indicative that some of the infrastructure around the green needs replacing?
No.
Well, the sewers are probably as old as Southwick. To be frankly honest, they're probably some of those pipes have been in there since they were laid. They're clay pipes. They have a extremely long lifespan. It happens that sewers just have cracks, things develop, road movements, land movements, the inundation of groundwater every year.
H2S.
It can have a lot of things, a lot of issues, and all it takes is one little bit to fall off to create a little hole, and that's it. But yeah, a lot of it is ground movement, traffic can shake things up. They're not hugely deep. They're probably a couple of meters deep there.
With the amount of tankers we've had recently there, that could have done. But the other thing is the inundation of water and infiltration isn't all from just around the green. The catchment that leads into the green goes right up to the Homebush Centre and the top of Southwick. So that is a very large catchment to go into. Technically, one sewer that goes under the bridge at the bottom of the green.
Yeah, so it's like a bit of a funnel. A large volume ending up funneling into one pipe going in there. So that's part of the problem where we get this this backup in the system.
Okay. Let me take others in for questions. I'm going to bring in a couple of people who haven't asked questions yet, and then I'll go to everybody else who has. So I've got Jessica. Your hand's up.
Hi there. Thanks so much for convening this. Really grateful to have access to everyone. I think looking at your long-term solutions, it seems to me that there are three separate issues. So the one is the mixing of groundwater and sewage. And I see a solution in that in your long-term solution, you're going to seal the pipes. The second problem is volumes, so large volumes of groundwater, and that's only going to increase with climate change. So this winter is likely to just be the first of many. What I don't see in your solutions is what are we going to do about these rising levels, and what is the long-term solution there? And then the third issue is one of governance. So we have some really frustrating engagements here, unable to determine who has the decision-making authority in entirely preventable flood moments for us. And that there is a sort of crisis of governance here, Southern being really firm that they aren't able to help, for example, with the balancing pond, the council saying that they're not able to help. While this is frustrating for us in the short term, because it's meant our houses got flooded unnecessarily, I just think that this is going to be a recurring issue. So just clarification on what is the governance structure around the success of groundwater and who's going to deal with it the years to come.
I can sort of answer. Yeah, the good questions. So yes, you sort of touched on the sort of what we're trying to do. So obviously our what we have to do is basically provide the drainage. So we step in when people can't use their toilets, when manholes start overflowing. That's something we have to do. So that's when we get the overpump setting up. The groundwater question is incredibly difficult because we've had this problem on and off across the area, and no one is responsible for groundwater. It's a natural occurrence, a natural source. So when we say to someone like the local council, they say we're not responsible, the environment agents aren't responsible, and we're not. So we become responsible because it gets into our sewer. If it didn't get into our sewer, we would not be in Southwick Green. And that is the biggest problem. Now, obviously, we have the thing, if we stop all the surface water, all that volumes of groundwater getting into our sewers, we have sort of fixed our issue, but it is no way an issue fixed for the residents of Southwick. In actual fact, it could make things a lot worse because of the millions of litres of water we're discharging either through tanking over pumping or just through natural system. That's got to go somewhere. So it's a far bigger picture, and you're absolutely right. It's a bigger picture which is in rough ground about responsibility and who takes responsibility for that.
Yeah, so going off the back of what Phil's saying is that we know that obviously with climate change, things not just on the water side but on the waste side, you know, with the heavy rain, it's really affecting us. So we have what's called a Pathfinder team, and basically they are going out and they are looking at other ways of removing surface water, that they're looking at not just your bog standard water butts, but they're also looking at plants. I find it quite interesting, but they're looking at eco, you know, plants and everything. One of the things that they had they've taken from Israel, I think, where there's sort of like a tree and I'm not very technical if you haven't guessed, but sort of like it's sort of like a hose and it feeds the underground and everything. But there is actually on the internet a big thing about, thank you Vanessa, nicely prompted, our Pathfinder projects. I took it to one of our local meetings down in Bognor the other week because I found it actually quite interesting. But they are doing some fantastic work at the moment on the Isle of Wight and also Pan Parish. And obviously with the weather that is going, they are highly in demand, and there's a lot of us after to move into the areas where we've had groundwater issues. When it comes around the governance with regards to the balancing pond and, you know, whose responsibility, is it Southern Water, is it EA? One of the things I think at the moment, rather than going, it's not our problem, it's yours, at the end of the day, that's not us serving our customers. So one of the things that we're doing at the moment is multi-agency working together. So Phil himself, he attends flood mitigation forums with the local council. I myself attended a flood forum down in Bognor the other month with Ada Council and the EA Highways, because it's not just one person. We all have a part to play, and we all want the greater good. It's just making sure that, you know, that we're not polluting and that customers have the right, you know, to not flood or anything. So that has something that we've just started, and we do a lot of work together, not just obviously in West Sussex but throughout. So I think you'll see a lot more of that over the years, but I do really recommend a more technical look at Pathfinder rather than me and my non-technical thing.
So, sorry, Kath.
Yeah, no.
As for the balancing pond, we have got a surface water sewer that starts there with a vented cover, which will take some of the excess water into our system as well. So that does start. Once we get the levels down in our surface water, that will start taking a lot of that groundwater as well.
Okay, I'm so sorry to jump in again, Roger. I have to say we are amazed to hear that, because it has been denied flat out to us. When we bought this house, we surveyed that, we saw that pipe. We have had wave after wave after wave of your team just saying to us that is not the case. There's no southern infrastructure in the balancing pond. So to have this on video is like the best news ever. I'm going to clip it and put it on social media.
Thank you very much. Good night now.
Yeah, you can actually see the vented cover when you walk down the pathway. The sort of pathway towards it is a sort of circular cover with holes in it, and it's at the southern end of the balancing pond. But yes, it is just a storage device. Our outfall connects there. Now, whether somewhat is groundwater, and it acts as that, but it also is connected to our system. So it should be sort of level-ish depending on things with what our surface washer system's doing. So it should hopefully go up and down with that. But yeah, you can see the little vented cover if you just look at the. Well, I don't know if it's still fenced off. I'm not too sure, but yeah, it's in the. The water was just over the top. It is nice clean water, and you can see the vented covers at the southern end of it.
Can I add to Catherine? This business about regulating the flow in heavy rainfall times. They did this pilot on the Isle of Wight. This was one of the things they discussed with the project kids with the chief executive recently. So they gave out loads of free water butts. Now it may seem just a simplistic thing, but water butts holding that water rather than the whole lot just flowing out in heavy rain together. They reduced the water level by more than 80% in the pilots that they did in the Isle of Wight. So Catherine, what is the chance of Southwick and around Southwick Green being prioritised to get water butts so everybody can then try and regulate their water flow in heavy rain times?
So Southwick Green, part of my responsibility and my team's responsibility is obviously looking at what risks we've had, and one of the things is at the moment it's pretty crazy at the moment with regards to what's going on with the rain. So we're very busy, but what we're doing is recouping at the same time, making notes of what we've learned, what we're doing and everything, and we're going off to the other part of the business, not just for ideas, solutions, but funding, all sorts of things. And Pathfinder has been one of the ones that I've reached out to the guy who does that, Dr. Nick Mills, because the success that it's had on the island, and they've done it in Pan Parish as well, has been really good. And it's sort of like I feel like a child, me next sort of thing. So
okay,
we are.
So can we have Southwick next? That's the question. Can you please put in a request? Because if you shipped a few hundred water butts to Southwick, it may speed up getting over this problem in the immediate future.
I will go and ask the question. When are you coming to town?
Okay.
But to be fair, the water butts are only part of that solution.
Sure. No, I know.
The main part is to try and stop the groundwater getting into our system.
Yeah, it's a mixture of not just water butts, but it's also lining and everything like that.
Is,
I'm not saying we just have water butts and don't do anything else. I'm saying you've got to do all the other stuff, but we could have the water butts quite easily. It's just a question of shipping them on a few lorries without cracking the sewers, and dishing them out to the residents would help. Anyway, we'll leave that as an ask with Southern Water as to whether that could be prioritised. Lynn, I'm going to come to you next. You have an asked question. Lynn Chapman.
Thank you. Just really wanting to tap into your knowledge here, really. Our understanding is from the Southwick Historical Society that there used to be a stream run between Underdown and Southview. Now, somebody has mentioned at some point that culverts were built many, many years ago in the gardens to drain this water away. Now, nobody has any kind of firm evidence of where these culverts are, if they're still intact, if they're still working. Is our problem potentially that these culverts have collapsed and aren't draining this water as they once were? Does Southern Water hold any kind of documentation on whether there were culverts, whether there still are culverts?
I'm personally
unaware. I've heard that as well. That going right the way back. That yes, that the Winterbourne used to come down between the two roads, and then basically flow straight where the green is and then out Waterdyke towards the sea. And I have heard that whenever the green was developed, this was all culverted. I have heard that. But yes, I have never seen any records. And I used to work with a guy who's did a lot of work, and the same thing, he heard that, but we've not any records. Now, maybe in some of the historic council records, and I'll try and find that out because I know a very handy bloke in the council, so I will look into that actually and see if they have anything.
Thank you, because that could be a resolution for somebody. Obviously it's not going to sort the flooding issue out, but ultimately it's the drainage from the downs coming downwards, trying to meet to the sea. If that could be channeled into something so that it's not going through everybody's property, gardens, houses. and into your sewage network,
and you're right, that it is an idea, but that would probably be a multi-agency sort of thing, because that could be pricey. But yes, you are absolutely completely correct that if that water that we know flows down through Suffolk, if that could be channeled in a nice straight pipe or whatever, straight into the sea or whatever, then that would take real pressure off a lot of things.
Lynn, have you asked anybody at the Southwick Society if they've got amongst their records, maps and records of this, or is that where it came from?
Yes, so we've got maps showing where the stream was running.
Right.
Yeah.
But no maps of any culverts. Somebody did have a picture, but we don't know where that is of.
Okay. So we're going to ask
yep,
the council.
I'll ask one of my chums in the council. Yeah.
Great. Robina, let's come to you. You're on mute.
A couple of points just from what Lynn said. There are fabulous. Go to our Southwick Library. There are fabulous maps there. I used to live, as I said, in Southview Road. I now live in Victoria Road. We have an underground stream going through our garden, and so there are all sorts of bits on that. So that was, I've had my hand up for ages. The original point I wanted to make was most residents in Southwick are 100% behind Southern Water and what they're doing, but they don't know what they're doing. No letters have been delivered, no information has been delivered. It took me talking to a man on the green to get a sort of stakeholder bit to be able to update people. Most people do not know. All they want is an understanding of what is happening, and they haven't had that. Obviously our problem around the green, and I include, and this does include, you know, the proposed development in Southview Road, is that we are, a majority of the houses have Victorian sewers. My husband and I, at least 3 times a year, have to lift up our lid and hose down to do that. Our drains are that size. Yep. This is years of neglect and years of not updating systems. It's as simple as that. But the main thing I want to say today is talk to us, explain to residents, tell us what is happening, why what you're doing is happening. And I'm really, really grateful that so many of Southern Water people are here on tonight's meeting. But I have been dealing with this problem as a councillor for a year with residents, especially in Southview Road and Underdown and around the green. Tell us what's happening. If you tell us, and I can relate to people, and that's what matters. And you're talking about, you know, there are so many problems with drains not taking things down. For I have had 5 people in the last 9 months telling me that their drains are blocked outside their house. My husband and I have been there to try and, do them. It's impacted, in some cases, 3 foot. We can't do anything. And the residents have been told that the next time they will be cleared is 2026. No, that's not acceptable.
Tim, could I just say,
Vanessa, please do.
Apologies for interluding. I don't want to be rude. Obviously, Rubina's input there is very valid, especially for the residents. But what could I just say? The meeting was due to finish at 15:15. I can see a lot of hands up. I just want to basically see whether or not we can capture questions and perhaps answer them after this.
Right, what I'm going to do, because the whole reason about communicating is why we've had this meeting and Southern Water have come to this meeting, for which I'm very grateful. And you have said that 1,023 customer letters were posted and 150 were hand delivered around the green. So there has been some communication. We're trying to improve that communication. I've got 2 other hands up. What I suggest we do is both take short questions together, and then we'll get a response from that. Stuart, I've got you next.
Thank you, Tim. So 2 points very quickly to clarify. One, that if it is of use to Southern Water, I have obtained the historical ordnance survey map detailing the river that runs from the Downs under Southwick over the green. I've got a picture showing that road over the top of the green, early 1900s with bridges, and it's why the fire brigade in World War II built a water storage tank in the North Green, which is still there. So during droughts, it's the only part of the green that is green. So I don't think it's just surface water that you are tackling here. You are tackling a underground river that reacts to surface water and rain and all sorts. So just, I have information if that's of use. My only other question is just to raise my concern that 28th December, I telephoned Southern Water to raise the concern of raw sewage floating down the street. My son was one of the children to walk through it. I rang you guys every day for 10 days, and it did take 10 days for anyone to turn up to put pipes in to pump across the green. It was pooling around the children's play park, and it was bad. The second time round, you switched your pumps off, and took 5 days of me ringing to tell Southern Water, well, you've switched your pumps off and there's sewage everywhere again. And that's when you brought your tankers in. The concern from residents, and I mean this respectfully, but in the time period it took to get a response from Southern Water to do something, public health was at risk. Kids were jumping in those puddles around the park, not knowing what it is. And communication delays, or however it happened, that is a little bit negligent when people's health are being put at risk because of raw sewage. And 200 meters down the road, you don't know what's in that puddle because you haven't seen it overflowing. So what can you do to guarantee in the future that the response can be a little bit more accurate and quick and keep people healthy?
That's a very good point. I'm going to take the other points and we'll come back collectively to ask those. I might just suggest on the map front that some of the engineers here might want to get together with Stuart and any other historical records just to do a bit of trawling over what is where, because I think there's quite a bit of local knowledge could help there.
I'm happy for that.
Great. Okay, Stuart, we'll link you up with them. James, can I come to your points, and then John, and then we'll get the answers. James?
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, just wanted to come back on something, on a question that you asked right at the start, Tim, that I don't think was properly answered, and that was acknowledging that there are surface water storage tanks under the green, and that, as you said, they're fully functioning at the moment to their capacity. Is it not the case then that they need radically upgrading or additional tanks added, given that they can't cope with the volume of water that we're experiencing now?
Yeah, very good point that I was going to come back on. But can we add more capacity? Basically, if they're all working as they should be, as you've inspected, clearly the capacity needs to be more because this problem is going to reoccur, as Jessica said. Good point. John?
Yeah, really, I'd like to make an observation, which a point that I've only just really noticed and put together, is that all along the south coast, most of the south coast, Brighton, Hove, Portslade, etc., is all separated from the national park because of the enormous cut and the A27. Southwick is the exception to this because we have the Southwick Tunnel, we have Southwick Hill. So we have above us Southwick Hill at 91 metres, and then further into the national park there are other elevations up to 150 metres. That water all falling onto the national park and then below has to flow somewhere, and obviously it's going to go to the sea. This may be some reason to explain why Southwick suffers the way that we do, and can Southern Water take that into account in their plans?
You haven't seen the A27 at Lancing the last few days, where it's flowing into the A27 and causing big flooding there. So it's an interesting point, but it's not just Southwick that's suffering.
Oh, no, I agree.
Okay, so the points about the really poor communication about potential sewage floating around where the kids were, and Stuart having to chase Southern Water for several days before we got any response. And then James' point, picking up the point I made earlier about, can extra capacity as a longer term solution be added to somewhere around the green that would take a lot more of the water, but rather than just let it float on the top? Who's going to take that?
I can, if you want.
Catherine, thanks.
So, apologies to start off with regards to the lack of response that you got from our customer service telephone number. We'll take that away and look into it. With regards to going forward, we are going to be setting up a what we call a reference number, so that you guys, if you have any issues, that there is a standard reference number that you can quote when you get through to our customer service telephone line, and you don't have to repeat yourself with regards to what the issues are or anything like that. With regards to updates and everything, we this is still actually being run as an incident at the moment. I had a call earlier on today. It's one of the things is we've got the customer team on, and with the likes of Martha and Georgia, we also have a local customer team as well. So letters have gone out, and I believe letters were sent out today, Tuesday as well, with updates to after we off hired all the tankers and everything, and we're left with pumps. So there will be updates going on also as well. And I know that Martha and Georgia and Sophie, who can't be here today as well, they work quite closely and with us with regards to issues. That's quite upsetting, Stuart, so I will take that away. Sorry, I just saw Stuart's thing come up.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just to say that the letters haven't made it up Southview Road. The only information I've got is from, unfortunately, having to ring and bug you, and then having a brilliant conversation with Vanessa last week.
It's not bugging, I promise you.
she was fantastic, and we had a good old conversation. But
she's a good egg.
We don't want to keep ringing you, and we don't want to get angry. But it's also.
That's
scared. Like my 11-year-old boy's autistic, and he walked through the sewage, and I mean the consequent meltdown and upset with that. Upsets most people. But
so with regards to what we've done locally before in places where we've had issues, we actually use just think of where there is one. So for example, in Winchelsea, we use the local parish notice board, and I'm just thinking whether or not there's one in Southwick. I can't remember. There is. Brilliant. So we do simple things like that where we put updates while this is going on at the moment. It's just like does a general overview of what's going on, basically, a condensed version of what we've shown you tonight, but also with regards to regular updates. But we are constantly monitoring those pumps. We've also got cameras, and I'm also have requested for alarms to be dialed through rather than audible alarms, or when sewage comes through, I've requested those as well, so that we don't have any pump failures as well.
Okay, Catherine, can I just suggest, and this is something that the gas company have done. We've got big works over in Worthing.
Yes, I know you said the other day.
So on your website, so that residents can go to your website, tap in Southwick Green or whatever it is, and you will have real-time update bulletins at least once a week, or when there's a real action that has happened.
We did that in Lansing, and that is something that we could look at doing here.
This should really have happened here before now, because
Yes.
I mean, just seeing a number of people have said that they've not actually received letters.
Yeah,
in
it
any
does
case.
concern me.
What we will do from this meeting, obviously we've now got a recording of this. I hope, if mine doesn't work, then Lee, I think you got yours. I will consult with Sue, and we'll do a number of action points and things that come out of this. And if you and I'll distribute those, but if you can also put them on your website, and then when you next communicate with residents, you can say this is the reference number, or this is how you get to the information point. Could you just, the final point, because we have gone over 7:30.
So capacity.
The point that James raised about capacity, is that something that is going to be looked at, or is it just a non-starter for whatever reason?
No, for like I said, you know, we don't just look at enlarging capacity, you know, building more tanks or everything like that. We use other methods such as the Pathfinder method as well. That's one example. But when it comes to tanks and everything, that's one of the things we feed back to our engineering department, and they look into. They're in the process of looking at what needs to be done around Southwick, and they do look at one of those options. So I couldn't say yes or no at the moment whether or not it's happening, because they're going away looking.
I think the best thing to say is we prefer to reduce the flow into the system, so that we don't need to expand it, rather than try to just build bigger and bigger tanks just to cope with stuff that's not supposed to be there in the first place.
Sure. No, I understand, but we need an explanation because people are saying, well, why don't you put another tank in? Because that seemed to work for a little while a few years ago. But an explanation of what options are.
Yeah, that was also on surface water, and most of the flooding we've got here is on the foul sewer.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Look, I'm gonna halt the meeting there, because we've gone over time, and I'm very grateful for all the people from Southern. There may well be we need to do a follow-up of this for a wider meeting. But we've addressed quite a lot of questions, but we've also given you quite a lot of questions to come back on, please, that weren't answered this evening. I think that the absolute key plea is there needs to be better communication. And an update of exactly what is going on. I mean, I've had residents who come to me saying, actually, Southern Water have been really good, and the tankers have turned up, and they've come when we needed them, or whatever. And then others, like you've heard from Stuart, that we've had to chase for days and days and days to get a response. So it's really mixed. And clearly a number of people here have not, but George is asking whether people have not got any communication, or was it just the most recent communication? So is there anybody here who's just not had any communication from Southern Water? If you nod your head, John hasn't, right? So quite a few people haven't had anything at all. Yeah, okay.
George, I
so
think
clearly
we'll
there's
pick
a
it
problem.
up separate and go off and ask.
It's detailed in the chat, Tim, as well. People have put on there that they haven't received. Yeah.
I would just like to thank you, Tim, for chairing, but I would just like to say to Catherine, I don't think you know Southwick. Of course there's a board right bang in the centre.
Rabina, we've gone over time. I think we know what we need to do. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Well said.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to close the meeting. Thank you, Southern Water. And then we will put the notes around as much as possible. Sorry, Vanessa, what do you want to say?
No, I was just waving.
Okay.
All right. Goodbye. I'm going to eat dinner.
Thank you very
much.
Done.
Bye. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, everyone.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Tim.